Well, good evening and welcome to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview. My name is Louis Mendes. On this week's show, we will, of course, be looking back at the win at Forest Green Rovers in midweek and ahead to Saturday's trip up to Derby County. And I want to say a special welcome to all of you who are joining us on our first ever live stream on YouTube. The show will now be going out twice a week live here on our YouTube channel. Of course, we'll still release it as an audio-only podcast as well afterwards, but you'll be able to watch us twice a week, interact live with the show like the good old days as well. So you're all more than welcome to join us live. Send your comments in via the little comment box on YouTube there as well. And yeah, we're really looking forward to doing this a bit more often. So joining me on our first ever live YouTube stream, first up in the bottom right, Mr. Nathan Muller. How you doing, Nath?
Living the dream, mate. Same old, different day. Another point on the board, all three.
Oh, excellent stuff. Also joining us, bottom left, Tom Walling. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Very excited to be able to see your beautiful faces again.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, and finally joining us top right is Mr. Lewis Cat. How you doing, Lou?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, excellent. I am excellent. Thank you all for joining us. So as I say, welcome to everyone who's joining us in the live stream and the comments in the bottom corner as well. S&C Davin has been waiting just under 11 hours in the YouTube page. So you're more than welcome. Everyone who's listening on the podcast, as per usual as well, don't forget to have a look at our YouTube page. You can subscribe to our channel. It's at Charlton Live on YouTube. But you can still get the pods in the usual place as well if you like to listen, for example, while you're driving or anything like that. So on this week's show, as I said, we'll be looking back at that game against Forest Green Rovers. We're going to hear, of course, from the Addicts boss, Dean Holden. We're going to hear from the Addicts goalkeeper, Ashley Maynard-Brewer as well. We've got your messages. We want your one-word reviews of that performance. So put your one-word reviews either into the comment box or tweet us at Charlton Live or email us studio@charltonlive.co.uk. After the break, we will try and get our head around what's going on with the takeover so far this week. It's been another strange one, if we're being honest. And then we will look ahead to the game with Derby. We're going to hear from Dean Holden once more. And we're going to hear from Callum from Rams Talk as well. So in midweek, we made the way up to Gloucestershire to face Forest Green Rovers, our first ever competitive fixture against them. Let's have a listen to what happened. This is the highlights from Charlton TV.
Further right into the Forest Green half, looking to take on his man, and he has done. He's gone past Robson. Still Raksaki heading towards the penalty area. Ball across. On his taken deflection and buried by Corey Blackett-Taylor from virtually the penalty spot. Lovely move down the right-hand side. What a ball to pick out. Raksaki, who cut inside, sprinted past Robson. Ball into the box, just deflected into the path of Blackett-Taylor, who buried it. And Charlton have the lead.
Well, what a run from Raksaki. Robson had no chance against him, that pace. And what I was just saying just now about getting players in the box, Charlton had 3, almost 4 in there this time. Ball deflects nicely to Blackett-Taylor, can't really miss. But Charlton had given Forest Green those warning signs just now. They had 3 or 4 crosses that didn't find the men. Perhaps there wasn't enough players in the box, but that time, a brilliant run from Raksaki. Maybe Charlton get a little bit lucky with the way it deflects to Blackett-Taylor. There's no chance he was missing it, but brilliant from Raksaki on that right-hand side. Maybe they expected him to cut inside onto his left. He went straight down the line, ball across, and Blackett-Taylor's on hand to score.
So there we go. The goal from Corey Blackett-Taylor, his 6th of the campaign. The good work from Jez Raksaki to set it up. But that clearly doesn't tell the whole story of the game, Nath. That second half, goodness me, that was... we certainly made hard work of that one, let's put it that way.
Yeah, we did, to be fair. And that's exactly what I said on Twitter on Tuesday night. It was a bit laboured and made hard work of it, which is a shame, really, because I thought we started really well. Moved the ball quickly. And then, second half, we came out and just played into their hands a little bit. We didn't quite pedestrian. Steve Brown said it after the game, summed up really well. We just went back to what we was doing on the Saturday. We were clinging on a little bit. And if we were playing a better opposition who could actually score, I think we would have lost that game. If we ended up drawing that game, I don't think we could have actually grumbled at it. I don't think we deserved the 3 points in full. But listen, it was one of those games. You knock it on the head, and then we go again on Saturday. But 3 points is the main thing. But yes, disappointing second half.
Yeah, I mean, try and take the positives out of it, Tom. In the first 20 minutes, I thought we were very good, and Jez Raksaki once again proving what a handful he is to defences in this division. It was ironic, really, because I read the pre-match interview with Duncan Disorderly, and he had highlighted Jez Raksaki as one they were going to try and double up on and keep quiet. But after 12 minutes, he looked very stupid.
Yeah, it's not the first time that Jez has done that to a club, is it? He's basically been our shining light since coming in on loan. And I think we said on Sunday's show it was important once again that we bounce back. I don't think we've gone 2 straight defeats. I think we've won every time after a loss under Dean Holden, and it was important we did that again. And I think Fleetwood were the best team in the world, so it was disappointing to lose that game. But you go in against Forest Green, you think this is one that we ultimately have to win. And the important thing was to get the 3 points. I don't know how many we've won away this season, but it's not a lot. So to get the win was the only important thing. Now, obviously, those who travelled up to the game are obviously going to want us to see us put on a show as well. But I think probably for a lot of people, it was a case of ticking off the ground, probably for a lot of people, and getting the 3 points. And we did both those things. So, ultimately, that's the most important thing. But we do need to improve performances. And ultimately, we can't be that reliant on somebody like Jez, who isn't going to be here next year. So, there's obviously work to do long term, but short term in a season where we don't look like we're going anywhere, then as Nath said, it's 3 points on the board, which is the most important thing at the moment. Yeah,
I mean, as Paul asks in the comments there on YouTube, Lewis, what would we have done without Jez Raksaki this season, top scorer? It's bizarre to think around the time that the January window was coming up and there was rumours he might leave the club. There were some at that time who were quite happy he wouldn't have been that bothered. But I think since he's got his scoring touch back as well, we've seen just how vital he is to this side.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, with Jez, he's impressed me really since he's come in. And I think he's probably been a victim of his own early success in that he's still very young as well. And I just think there's still that raw ability in him that he is going to make mistakes and maybe his decision-making isn't always going to be right. That comes with playing the game a lot more. It's his first professional loan, and a goal return of 9 goals so far is no mean feat at all. I'm just grateful we didn't go back in January. It would have been a disaster if we'd have lost him, because you take his goals out the side, but not just his goals, his creativity and his assists as well. And it's a completely different story for us this season. So, look, we do need to, it's something we need to address, as Tom said, because he's not going to be here next season. It's very unlikely that he will be. So we are going to lose those goals as we head into the summer and we prepare for next season. So we do need, that's obviously a target that we need to, position we need to target quite early on. But, I'm delighted for him because, as you say, there were a few doubters in January and there were maybe 50-50 split of, if he goes back, will we be that bothered, etc. I personally would have been. So I'm very glad to see that he was able to stay here, and he looks like he's enjoying his football. And I imagine as a young player, that's the most important thing. And if he's contributing like he is and he's becoming the key player that he is for us, that must be doing his confidence the world of good. And if he does get a championship loan or something next season, then the experience of this campaign for us is only going to benefit him.
And as Dan says in the comments, without Jez and Corey Blackett-Taylor up front, we have nothing that needs a huge improvement. I mean, we also had absolutely nothing other than probably that first 20-25 minutes, Nathan. I mean, can you put your finger on what changed? I mean, obviously it took until probably the last 15 minutes for Forest Green to start really creating chances, but I couldn't really put my finger on why we looked so lackluster after what had been a really good opening stage.
I think it was complacency, perfect, to be honest with you. I thought we was doing everything right. They couldn't handle us. You know, their left back couldn't really handle Jez. And I think on that, what was good to see with Jez is he went on the outside instead of coming. We know how good he is coming inside, but him going on the outside this time showed another part of his game, which is a lot more improved than when he first joined. But I'd put it down to complacency, to be honest. We just stopped doing everything we did in that first half. Everything seemed too easy, and everyone's watched us all season. It's very rare that we'll do a 90-minute job of playing really well, but we went from one extreme to the other. And yeah, as we said earlier, we were hanging on a little bit, but we were just slower with the ball, taking too many touches, and we were enabling them to set. And then when we did try and get out, we found, Chucks and Macaulay was quite isolated, because I don't know how many times we put it into Chucks' feet, but not a lot. And the game was bypassing them, and they grew into the game and they were going to have to throw the caution to the wind a little bit, and they did that. And obviously, with us not doing what we set out to do early doors, we only invited the pressure onto ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to talk a bit more about Ashley Maynard-Brewer and that fantastic save he made when we hear from Ashley in a few moments' time, Tom. But we saw a debut as well for Michael Hector. Obviously, a bit of a surprise, actually, because obviously we know he hasn't played that often recently or at all this season, haven't been without a club. But considering I didn't really know what to expect, I was quite infused by his performance. He got some really good blocks in on the edge of the box, won a couple of headers. But most excitingly, it seems he can kick the ball really high and really far, like John Smith. He just absolutely punted it up the pitch 2 or 3 times, which was it's nice to see an old-fashioned centre half in a way.
Yeah, he hasn't been Charlton-fied yet, has he? So it'll only be a matter of time before he's sticking one in his own net or headbutting someone if Innes has anything to do with it. But you're right. He obviously came with a bit of a solid enough reputation, but as you say, his game time had been very limited, so we weren't sure what to expect. But it's just a brief cameo to start with, but it's a positive sign. Obviously, it's against bottom of the league as well, so you don't want to read too much into it at this stage. But, and this maybe sounds silly, but to have someone who can and is prepared to just get rid of it is not a bad thing, because we've seen a little bit more directness since Holden's come in. We do still try and move it around, which I think is the right thing, but at least we're trying to move it around and get forwards. And ultimately, when you've got people like Jez and like Corey who might be able to play off the shoulder of a last defender and have some pace in behind there, and Bon, who obviously loves getting offside, so if he can figure that one out and actually stay onside, then a long ball over the top from Hector might actually be worthwhile. So, yeah, it's early days, but we need some support up there. We know Innes is going to get banned again at some point. We know that we're struggling for centre-back, so to have another option and somebody that's a bit more reliable than perhaps a Lavelle or O'Connell is definitely a good sign.
Yeah, I think we might have needed an astronaut to latch onto one of those long balls from Michael Hector. But yeah, good points there. Dan saying, yeah, we went 1-0 up and the players dropped off. They just looked like they thought they'd already won the game, which you can't do in this league. I mean, it's 3 away wins on the spin, Lewis, which is impressive considering we'd won 1 all season before Dean had come in. It was a nice trip, actually. It's a weird one considering my stance very much is we're going absolutely nowhere this season. I'll just try and take the little wins where they come, and that was a nice trip. Probably the only trip we're going to get to Forest Green for a while, because they look destined to go down. But it is nice that we're finally enjoying our away days again. Hopefully more of the same on Saturday.
Yeah, it's really important, because that form was so poor, wasn't it, at the start of the season? We got the win up at Shrewsbury, and it just never kicked on to anything. We've had some decent away performances now as well, which is great, because one thing we've discussed many a time on the show is it feels like our away following has just got greater, like post-lockdown. And to see those numbers travelling around the country, putting in the effort, putting in the money and the time to watch the team in a season that, as you say, probably won't really amount to anything. It's nice to see that the fans are getting rewarded for that. I mean, we took over 800 or so on Tuesday night on Valentines Day to Forest Green. Probably about 800 other halves that probably had the hump after that. But to come back with the 3 points, it's good. And we needed it as well because of the performance at Fleetwood, at home to Fleetwood on Saturday. Sorry, we needed to bounce back, and we haven't always had that. this season. We've had a defeat and then we've never really been able to recover and kick on and try and bounce back. And we've done that now. And we're going to go into a really big game, against Derby on Saturday, another away game, which I think now, looking at it, we go into it with a lot more confidence given where our away form is now than where it was earlier on in the season. So, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying that we're starting to put in these performances away because, we deserve it. The numbers we take away, it's nice to see people rewarded for it.
Excellent stuff. Right, well, let's hear what Dean Holden had to say after the game. This is what happened when I spoke to him by the tunnel at Forest Green Rovers. In here at Forest Green, it wasn't all plain sailing, but you got over the line in the end.
Yeah, it was a interesting way of putting it, Louis. I think for 20 minutes we were as good as we've been since I come into the job. I mean, we passed the ball excellently, but we were patient and we waited for the spaces to open up, but we played with purpose. We were running in behind and we were playing forward in behind the opposition back line and getting our wingers into the game, and they couldn't really live with us. And I think if I'm being brutally honest, I think the players maybe thought it was a bit too easy for them at that time. A little bit of carelessness crept in at that point, sort of 20-25 minutes in, hitting long balls we didn't need to hit, leaving them short. They were counter-attacking on us without really hurting our goal, but there was certainly a bit of a change of momentum, and we should have been out of sight really with the way that we dominated the game early. And then so even the second half we come out dominant. But again, we didn't run in behind and playing behind them anywhere near enough in that second half, and we were fishing little balls into midfield and they were trapping us. And again, Ash has not had a great deal to do, in fairness, but I mean the one save he has had to make from the corner is an outstanding save, and it's not an easy place to come, to be fair. The bottom of the league, but they're fighting for everything, and it's a bit of a lively pitch. So overall, as I say, you don't turn your nose up at 3 points anywhere, certainly, but there's certainly lots of work to do.
You try and take that as a positive, I guess, that amount of pressure they put on in the closing stages that Charlton were able to hold on.
Yeah, I mean, we have to credit to the players. They throw themselves at things. The amount of blocks that we put in, he's there for all to see, but again, there's probably too many of them needed, I think, for the amount of action in and around our goal towards the end of the game. It shouldn't really be needed if we take control earlier and we get that second goal, or we certainly take control in terms of playing in their half. So we played into their hands, but we didn't get away with 1-0. We won the game 1-0, but as I say, there's certainly a lot to look back on and to improve going into these next two big games, obviously Derby and Sheffield Wednesday.
You mentioned the save from Ashley Maynard-Brewer as well, and again for a game where he didn't actually have a great deal to do, again to still be alert to make a stop like that was impressive.
I think there's to get the breakaway, isn't there, when the boy gets on the inside of Sess and Ash comes charging out, the boy squares it, he just misplaces his pass. That was a tricky moment for us, and we've worked hard on set pieces. We need to improve on them. We looked actually better tonight in terms of the organisation, the boys on the pitch. Decision making was better, but that one obviously he ended up getting a header on it, but it's some save, I have to say.
Able to get Michael onto the pitch for his debut towards the end, and he made one good block on the edge of the box, a couple of proper John Smith style clearances as well, which are quite enjoyable. It was a decent start for him.
Yeah, he's proper, isn't he? He's a proper centre back, great communicator. He'll defend when he needs to. He can play as well with the ball at his feet, but he came in, much needed experience, and that's a real positive for us, I have to say. And obviously to get chucked 70 minutes or so on the back of half an hour at the weekend, again, he's a bonus.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Chuks because obviously it's probably considered a risk at times to start him, but is he in a place at the moment where he can start games, do you think, consistently or now and then? Or?
Well, I think we had a decision to make sort of 4 weeks ago on the back of his late withdrawal in the warm-up at Portsmouth. He'd been sort of training for a few days, and then there's always a game around the corner, and he weren't really building up any conditioning, so we took a decision to really give him a mini pre-season for sort of 3.5 weeks. He's played a 21s game. He's obviously had half an hour at the weekend, and I was comfortable starting him. And I don't think he had a lot of the ball in the first half, but certainly he was doing a good job in terms of occupying two centre backs with his brute strength, and it was allowing spaces on the pitch for the midfielders to take control of the game. So, that's a real positive.
6 goals now for Corey. It's his most prolific season in his career. That's something he's needed to add to his game, but he certainly seems to have improved his end product this season. Is that something you feel like since you've come into the club?
I wouldn't take any credit for it. I think in terms of his positioning, I think where he scores his goal from, he's doesn't just happen by chance. When Jez opens up the pitch with his magical feet and he gets on the outside of their fullback, and once he's driving towards goal, you see too many modern wingers nowadays who are stood outside the back post or stood on the edge of the box wanting it to drop to it a worldie in the top corner, and we need our wingers getting in at the back post to get the face cut to score or whatever it was, and he's arriving, his timing was excellent, and good finish. 2 more questions, I see you're cold. First of all, excellent support on a Tuesday night, a long way from home. Yeah, outstanding. I think 1,000 or so have travelled up. Brilliant support. Again, getting right behind the players at a time when we need them. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to going to Pride Park on Saturday. And yeah, I think we maybe need to get them on some dating websites, because 1,000 coming up on Valentines Day is a great achievement.
Yeah, and finally, I mean, we've seen 24 hours has been a long time in football, especially at Charlton this week. I know you spoke to Rich yesterday, but is there any update you can give about yourself or about what's going on? Have you spoke to Thomas recently? I know he's not in the UK, but
no, Thomas is obviously away in Denmark for his mother's funeral. Yeah. So no, we exchanged messages before the game. I've just actually got a message from him there after the game, which was good. So no, there's no update.
There we go. That's Dean Holden speaking after the win at Forest Green Rovers in midweek. Obviously, I mean, we'll come on a little bit more to his future and what will follow when we come to talk about the takeover in a few moments' time. But yeah, he's clearly pleased with what he's seeing at the moment, Lewis, and yeah, you can't blame him for that. That it's good that he's not accepting overall what was probably a poor performance. It's good that he sort of paid reference to that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think what I like about Dean is he comes out and he speaks well, but he always speaks honestly. He doesn't try and dress things up. You know, if a performance isn't quite there and we still get the points like we did on Tuesday night, then he won't come on and praise how well we played. He'll admit if we've not been at it, which, as we say in the second half, we definitely weren't. But it just feels like he's brought in this refreshing approach from every aspect. You know, the fact that he's been linked to other jobs of late and the reaction of that, and obviously the ongoing saga with who's going to be the owner of the club and what that means for his future, the sort of immediate protection around Dean Holden and fans really sort of warming to him very quickly. I think he's brought something really special to the football club. It feels like everyone's pulling in the same direction for, you know, despite where we are in the season, it feels a positive, you know, on the pitch to be following Charlton at the moment, which is great. And you know, we've got to take the belief that he's putting into the rest of the games of the season. And as he said in the South London Press today, he doesn't think the season's dead. You know, he thinks the season's still alive, and he's not ruling out the playoffs, regardless of your graph, which probably is more.
I've got a graph to show him, haven't I?
Exactly. Yeah, he needs to see that. But you know, he's got to inspire the players to push for something. You know, we don't want the season to be dead, otherwise the interest dwindles. So yeah, we just got to keep doing what we're doing at the moment and try and keep picking up points, because you know, it's enjoyable, as I say, at the moment to follow them, especially away from home. So, got to keep it up.
Dudley said he thinks that most teams look fitter and stronger than us. We seem to fade after 25 minutes or half an hour of games. Is that something you picked up on this season, Nath?
No, I haven't really, no, but it's a good point. As soon as I read it, I did sit there and wonder. I wondered if could it be due to the fact at the beginning part of the season, we had a lot of the ball, so we weren't really chasing the ball very much. I know we didn't do a lot with it earlier in the season, but it could be a point. I don't know, but I think with Dean Holden, if he gets a pre-season, I think they'll be doing plenty of running. Put it that way. But I suppose all different managers like different things. I don't know if Ben Garner was one to. I mean, they went out on pre-season and would have done fitness regimes and stuff like that, but. It could be, if that's an observation that he's made, that's a good point. I've not actually noticed it, but I think most of the time we shoot ourselves in the foot a lot, whether that's mistakes or we just drop our standards, which obviously Tuesday was evident of that. But that's a good point. But I'll definitely be looking out for that on the weekend for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel's saying that we need to get crosses into the box earlier. 99% of the time, it's head. For the line, the byline, and have a cross the shot, we need to mix it up, bring others into the game. Bob's saying that Big Heck is exactly what we've been missing all season. A no-nonsense centre-half. We certainly could have done with a few of those when we were busy passing it around the back at times this week, or this season, I should say, Tom. That's been frustrating. Daniel says he thinks Washington would have worked better in a 2, but someone else was saying above, Luke said he thought Washington would have worked well in that 3 with Jez and Coram. Would you have seen him fitting into that role? We've seen him play that lone striker a couple of times when he was here, and I don't think he would have worked that well. I tend to agree with Dan that it probably would have been better if he was still here in a 2. But it's certainly, I think, when Miles is out, I think we are lacking up top, because Chuks, when he started the game, wasn't really that involved. And Macaulay Bonne is unfortunately still Macaulay Bonne.
For me, I just think we would have been better if Washington was still here. It's as simple as that. And I agree with Daniel that I think he worked better in a 2, that's for sure. But I think just having him as an option would have been better than not having him. And if he had been still here, then maybe Stockley would still be here as well, because they would be in a 2 and they would be doing well. But obviously that's not what Ben Garner wanted to do. Obviously we've seen the emergence of Lee Burns. So there have been positives to him not being here, but I just think overall, I think his contribution last season was, I don't know if it was underrated as such, but the reason to get rid of him at least was a strange one. And I know perhaps it was more to do with perhaps off the pitch than on, but I think what he offers in terms of his work rate, in terms of his chasing down, and in terms of his leading from the front was huge. And we've not really had someone like that since. Like Jayden, not quite move enough. Bon likes to do it, but not quite fit enough. And the likes of Jez and Corey obviously have to do a little bit going backwards as well, and that's not really their game. So, yeah, I think there's been a bit of a Washington-shaped hole in this side all season, sadly, and we've never really replaced that. And I think we've been struggling for an identity since then, and that hasn't been helped by the manager change mid-season as well.
Yeah, it's something we've had to deal with a lot recently. Right, don't forget, we still want your one-word reviews of the win at Forest Green Rovers. We're going to come to those in a few moments' time, but now let's hear from Ashley Maynard-Brewer. The Addicts stopper made a superb save late on from that close-range header to preserve all 3 points, and I caught up with him after the game at Forest Green Rovers. The win here at Forest Green, sort of backs to the walls at the end there, but got over the line in the end.
Yeah, I think a great result against tricky opponents. Obviously, they don't have a great league position, but we know when it's 1-0, they're going to throw the kitchen sink. They're fighting to stay up, and these games are tricky. So for us to see out what is a really good result is really important.
Yeah, we could feel that pressure building in the closing stages, and those chances started coming, particularly, of course, the header from the corner, which you must have seen late, but you got down to really well.
Yeah, I think these games are quite tricky. Didn't have too much to do, but I know that, when there was the last 15, 20, they were going to get 1 or 2 moments. So just, made sure that I was switched on and luckily made the save. Yeah,
and with that pressure building in the second half, as you say, you didn't actually have to make too many saves. So your defence in front of you were throwing in blocks, particularly on the edge of the box as well. So you must have been pleased as a unit with the display.
Yeah, I think we haven't kept enough clean sheets this season. So for us to see out a good result, put lots of blocks in, was really important. There was a few changes, but to the back four, but did really well.
Yeah, what do you think changed in the game? Because Charlton obviously started really on the front foot, got the goal early. Jez was causing havoc down this side, Corey on that side. But sort of after 25, 30 minutes, Forest Green seemed to sort of come back into the game. What do you think was the catalyst for that?
I'm not too sure. I think, towards the latter stages of a game, you're always going to get a bit out of pressure. I think being 1-0, it's always a bit tricky. Pitch was tricky and we couldn't play the football we wanted, but like I said before, great to see it out.
Yeah, and a big 3 points as well. It's 5 wins from 7. It's a good little run that Charlton are on. I guess whether it's coming too late or not is still up for debate, but it's a good bit of form that Charlton are on now.
Yeah, and there's still lots of football to be played. So if we maintain our standards and keep this going, hopefully by the end of the season we can be in amongst those playoff spots. Yeah.
How are you enjoying your time between the sticks? Obviously now with JJ back as well, that's added pressure with the club number one sort of creeping up behind you. It's going to sort of drive your performances to try and keep at the level you've been at over the last few weeks, I guess.
Of course. It's been great having him back. He's been back now for a few weeks, and lovely guy and trains really hard. So of course there's a bit of added pressure, but I just want to keep playing, keep maintaining my standards, and
How important was it to have Ryan in the side today? Obviously, after his red card was clearly wrong on Saturday, to get that overturned. Is it good to have him back playing with you?
Yeah, really like playing with Ryan. Having Ryan, since I've come in the team, it's been pretty consistent with Ryan, Nessie, and I think we understand each other pretty well. I think you can see that on the pitch. Both bloody love defending, and getting a good run of games and consistency with them has been really important with our results.
Yeah, I'm reacting to that setback a couple of weeks ago against Bolton as well. A mix-up at the back, which isn't something we've actually seen too often under Dean, but it was obviously something we saw quite a lot earlier on in the season, unfortunately. But when something like that happens, how do you sort of regroup as a pair of you and react to that, and as a defence as a whole?
I think there's a really good team culture here that if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. You regroup and you get on with it. It's not a team where you go into the change room and you get blasted for making a mistake. It's learn from what you did wrong and get on with it. And I think that's been evident in the in the last few weeks where something's not gone perfectly, we get on with it and we respond like we did today.
Do you think there has sort of been, obviously since Dean comes in, there's been a bit of a change in mentality with how often we perhaps hold on to the ball at the back, and that's sort of taken the pressure off some of the mistakes that we're seeing earlier on in the season?
Yeah, I suppose so. The gaffers come in, emphasise doing the basics right and being a team that's hard to beat. So whether that's meant a change in how we play, I'm not too sure, but the results, I guess, speak for themselves recently.
Yeah. And just lastly, obviously Derby coming up on Saturday will be a very different test to here in many ways. Obviously Derby are flying. It's a very different stadium to here, of course. Looking forward to that one, to try and test yourselves against a side like them.
Yeah, of course. I think we know if we want to be up in the playoff spots, we have to beat teams like that. Obviously it's going to be a different test, but we've had some really good results this season against some big teams. So, let's hope for a good result.
Is there still belief that the playoffs are achievable amongst the squad?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I said, there's lots of football to be played, and 5 wins from 7. We maintain our standards, and I think we can push to those spots.
There we go, Ashley Maynard-Brewer, another man who needs to look at my graph. I think if we were to make the playoffs, out of our last 16 games, we'd have to win probably 11 minimum. that's to give you an idea of where we need to be. But if we keep up the form we've had over the last few weeks, then we'd get there. But obviously, that would be somewhat remarkable. Right, I did ask for your one-word reviews of the win at Forest Green Rovers. Paul Davies went for Panglosian because we inadvertently brought that word back into public conscience after last week as well. So I really can't remember what it means now. Dobson, the Essex Polo, said it was forgettable. Lee said it was tedious. David Young said it was remote. Yeah, Forest Green Rovers was absolutely in the middle of nowhere, up a really big hill as well. Robert said it was gritty. Matt said it was lucky. Muzzer said it was non-Panglosian. And Andy said it was tortuous. So yeah, plenty of your conversations as well. Paul Glover says that the playoffs are done, and I agree with him. Callum saying that we're going to end up 9th. No investment means we're going to be here for a long time. And then finally, Jonathan West from the Upbeat says hello. I hope you're well, Jonathan. I hope you are enjoying the show. Right, we're going to have a little break here on Charlton Live. When we come back, we will have a little chat about what's been going on with the takeover. We'll see you in a few moments' time. Right, welcome back to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview. Don't forget, this is our first ever live stream on YouTube as well. So if you're listening back to the pod in your usual places after the event, maybe have a look on Sunday and see if you want to try and join us live on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is just at Charlton Live. We're going to be on live probably about 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, I should imagine. When we'll look back at the Derby game, we'll have, of course, reaction from the manager, Dean Holden, and hopefully a player if we win as well. And we'd love your reaction as well. So make sure you get involved in the live comments, or you can email us studio@charltonlive.co.uk, or you can tweet us at Charlton Live. So let's try and work out what on earth's been going on with the takeover this week, shall we? So at the start of the week, Charlie Mevin was on BBC Radio London threatening legal action against Thomas Sandgaard. Seems to be some sort of argument over when the period of exclusivity between the Sandgaard group and Mevin's mob ended, and then Sandgaard started speaking to someone else. So Charlie seems to be arguing that it had not ended when he was hawking the club to other people. Sandgaard seems to be arguing the opposite of that. Since then, we've also heard that there's some American chap, Mark Spiegel, who's been named as someone who's interested in coming in and buying the club. We know nothing about him at the moment in time. We know nothing about what he's going to bring to the table. But we have seen Peter Storey coming in as the CEO, former West Ham and Portsmouth chap. Oversaw Portsmouth going into administration and was arrested during his time at the club. So, yeah, great news, Tom. Excited for the future? What have you made of it all?
Not going to have much of a future, are we? No is the short answer. We obviously did the show on Sunday and talked a little bit about it, and then it's all kicked off more this week. But No, the Peter Story one I find very confusing. I don't know a lot about him, but what I do read about him, I certainly don't like. So that worries me. I think the one thing that gives me a little bit of confidence, and we touched on this on Sunday's show, although we didn't really know too much about it then, is the way Methen's come across since as well with his interview on Aaron Paul's show and everything. It doesn't suggest to me that takeover would have necessarily been to the benefit of the club. Now, I'm not saying that having Sangard still here is great either, but I wonder if we've perhaps dodged that bullet at least. Now, there's probably more bullets in the chamber flying all over the place from other potential owners, and that's obviously a risk. But sometimes it's better the devil you know. And whilst I think Thomas certainly has a very clear idea of what he wants to do with the club, and it's perhaps not what we agree with, at least we know that is the case. Whereas I think with the Methen back bid, I'm not sure we really knew or understood what we were getting. So I'm not too disappointed that they're not here, but I still think that Sangard probably shouldn't be here for much longer. But if he is going to go, then we need to find a suitable owner. And obviously that is hard to attract at the best of times. So no, Story coming in doesn't fill me with confidence. Everything off the pitch doesn't fill me with confidence, but I'll still be there at Derby and focusing on the pitch, or trying to at least, come Saturday.
Yeah, Jordan says looking forward to see you all do a live stream at 10 a.m. on a Sunday after a night in Plymouth Popwell. That'll be particularly challenging for Nathan, of course. Lewis, you in your role away from the show as a fan advisor, obviously you had a chat with Thomas at the start of the week. I mean, you got confirmation from him about the story before the club even did somehow. So it was in the SLP, then it was on the Lewis Cat Twitter account, and then it was on the club Twitter account about 3 days later. So you almost got an exclusive there. But I mean, can you give us any insight into what you learned speaking to Thomas? Obviously, it's hard to take anything that anyone involved in this absolute shambles says with a straight face. But I mean, what did he say to you? Well, I know he's going through a difficult time personally at the moment, which probably doesn't help. But did you get the idea that he is still thinking of selling? That does seem to be the case.
It feels that way. I mean, reading into the Peter Story appointment, the fact is consultancy to me suggests very short term, which whether that's to steady he came out and said there's no link between Story and the American guy, Mark Spiegel.
Which is interesting because that's opposite to what Simon Jordan said on TalkSport today, and he claimed to have spoken to people involved in the bid. So, and obviously it would make sense considering Sangard happily let other people appoint 4 people, under Methen, including Dean Holden, the manager, and the likes of Andy Scott. So I think there's probably a reasonable assumption this Peter Story is here on the basis of someone else rather than Thomas, who, to be honest, let's be honest, probably doesn't know who Peter Story is.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is that. It's a difficult one. I mean, even in the role that myself and Lucy are in, we kind of take most things with a pinch of salt. I mean, we try and get answers, whether those answers are perfect or what people want to hear. We try and put it out there because of the uncertainty around it all. Obviously, the most important thing here is that the club ends up in the right hands, and with someone that's going to invest. If Thomas has got to a point where he doesn't want to invest anymore and it doesn't want it in his hands anymore, then he needs to make sure that the sale is done sooner rather than later, because I've seen in a few of the comments, like, people will jump on our situation in the summer if we're still going through a takeover debacle where we'll have players whose futures will be uncertain. We have a manager whose future is very uncertain at this present time. There's a hell of a lot that needs sorting out off the field, and none of that can happen until a takeover is sorted. I agree with Tom that the Methen fronted takeover was probably not the right option, given the amount of warning and articles that we read about him that was shared by Sunderland fans. Likewise, I don't know enough about Peter Story to comment, but when you see what Portsmouth fans are saying about him, that also fills you with the same worries that Charlie Methen did. It's one of those things where it depends how much fans trust the judgment of Thomas Sangard at this stage, and I would say that they don't. So,
what made you think of that?
Story appointment is going to be controversial regardless. Whether that's short term and it oversees a takeover that leads us to better things, we can only hope. From what Simon Jordan said on TalkSport earlier, he seems to know Peter Story and thinks that we're in good hands. Whether we can trust what Simon Jordan says, given his links to the lockdown in Surrey, remains to be seen. So it's a really difficult position. Ultimately, the football club has to come first in all of this, and whatever the outcome, it needs to be that the club ends up in the hands of somebody who wants it and wants to drive it forward. If that's not Thomas anymore, he needs to hurry up and sell it. If the people coming in are serious, then they need to prove they're serious early on. It's such a difficult position, and it's so frustrating because, as I said earlier, it feels like Dean Holden's brought in a real lift, and not knowing if he's going to be here beyond the end of the season, or really not even knowing if he's going to be here for the rest of this season. You know, the doubts with him being brought in with Andy Scott and everyone else. It's impossible at the moment, but we're going to keep pushing and trying to get answers for people, because it's the football club is more important than just a little bit of gossip, and we need to make sure that it's being handled properly. But whether that's the case or not, I don't know.
I know you love talking about the takeover, Nath. But the one thing I will say, I've never known so much legal threats being thrown around as I have over the last few years. Like, why does our club attract this nonsense? Is it because we find ourselves in this vulnerable state where we don't own the ground, and therefore you can probably acquire the majority of what of what is the going concern of the club quite cheap? You don't have to be a big money man to come in and buy this club, because there's no real assets. It's a loss-making business. So you can get your claws into it. And then, well, if you're certain people that we saw a couple of years ago, you have access to a lot of funds. Or if you're not, you might just think, I can do something with this without risking a lot of my own capital. We seem to attract all sorts of idiots who love throwing legal threats around as well when they don't get their way.
Yeah, I think, like, if you look at all the other clubs that have been run through the mill in recent years, that it's the same sort of thing. You've got a club that's struggling, some worse than others, and that's when you have the vulture circling. It's just like anything in life. Something's dying and you've got a carcass, and you're going to have them all circling around, wanting a bit of the pie and all that jazz. And I know you said I don't like talking about it. I just find it boring, mate. There's going to be another court case of something or other. And I think the problem is that I think one of the chaps said it earlier, we don't know what the next person's incentive is going to be. Like, are they going to be any better? Are they going to be worse? Are they going to be worse than what we have and have had before? It's just that unknowing, I have no idea what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. And we're just sitting here in the gallery, just watching it unfold. And probably a little bit of helplessness that you can't really control anything, and I think that's what hurts the most. But I just have to mention that pod on that bit about Popwell, Blue. Sorry, mate. I've refused to go into another. I refuse to go into another nightclub that plays Frozen. So wherever Plymouth takes me, I will not be going back into that Popwell, because I think both of these chaps who are with me, and even you might have been in there with us as well.
Yeah, I was in. I think I might have been in there briefly. Yeah.
Mate,
I mean, you say
that
now. You say that now.
I'll be there. I'll be
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock on that Saturday night. You'll be queuing up to get in. Dan's asking, with the stadium, is it Roland not wanting to sell it, or is it people not having enough money to buy it? It's probably a bit of both. Like, Roland, has this number in his head that Matt Southall, agreed to pay, which he was never going to pay, of like in the region of £50 million, which is ridiculous. So people don't have that sort of money to waste on it. But at the same time, if Roland's holding on to that price and he's got quite a favourable lease now with the club paying a fair whack of money every year, he's probably not that bothered about selling it. Anyway, right, that's enough of that rubbish. Anyway, let's turn our attention to the trip up to Derby on Saturday. Now, Dean Holden had his press day earlier on today. Terry speaking to the Addicts boss. He asked him to look ahead to that trip to Pride Park, starting off with the team news following Tuesday's game at Forest Green Rovers.
In build up to Saturday, especially Stephen Sessignon, because sometimes he gets a flare up after a game. Is everything okay?
It's too early to say, to be honest. We're still within 48 hours of that game, aren't we? So we're still sort of assessing. There's one or two players that have been out and joined the group this morning. There's a few that have stayed in for some extra work. So I think we'll know a bit more tomorrow on that Friday morning.
And the three that we've been missing, Miles, Mandela and Todd, how are they coping? How are they coming on?
So Todd's had a really good scan result in terms of it's where we expected it to be. Again, you never quite know. He's been telling us that he's feeling good, so he's on track to return as we expected. Still with the physios at the moment, but that was a positive in terms of the scan. Manny actually joined the group for the first time since I've been at the club. He's been out a long time. He only did the first part of the session, the warm-up, the passing exercises, but having been through quite a few longer-term injuries myself, I know how important that is in the process and the rehabilitation. So he's been brilliant since I come to the club, Manny, in terms of his off-the-pitch motivation with the players, the standards. He's always in the team meetings. He's brilliant. So good to see him with his smile back on the pitch this morning. Again, nowhere near just yet from coming back in, but that's a nice step for him. And Miles, we're assessing Miles day to day, as I said the other night. It's very minor. Whether Saturday will come too soon for him, we'll just have to make a call on tomorrow, I think.
Cool. Trip to Pride Park on Saturday. They're fifth, and prior to a week ago, they hadn't lost in 15 and had won 9 of those, but they've just experienced a defeat and a draw in the last couple. We're now 5 league wins out of 7, so confidence is with us. Can that be a cause for optimism? And bearing in mind, the last 3 victories away, all away from home. So confidence? I
think irrespective of the opposition, you've always got to be optimistic because anything's possible, but you have to believe it in the first place. So I think Paul's done a brilliant job since he's gone in there. I've known him a long time. Richie and Matt, his coaches, is the same. Great to see him get such a big job, and they've grabbed it with both hands, to be fair. As you say, the run they've been on has been phenomenal. And it just shows you what can be achieved when you get that feeling of everybody together, the supporters. And I was there a couple of weeks ago, brilliant atmosphere for us. For some of our young players are going to really relish going to Pride Park and playing in a really big atmosphere. Our away fans will travel well, I'm pretty certain of that, and get right behind the team. So it'd be a great game. It shows you how big this division is in terms of some of the clubs, doesn't it? So, but you're right. They've lost in the cup to West Ham, and they lost to Wickham, and then they drew the other night against 10 men. So it just shows you on any day. We beat them early in the season. Obviously, totally different circumstances. Both teams had different managers then and different styles of playing, etc. But we go into every game confident. We've got a good group of players, and if we turn up on the day and we're bang at it, then there'll be a match for anyone.
Last couple of games, especially, we've probably been seen as favourites to win the games. This Saturday, it'll probably be a different story. Derby will probably be tagged as the favourites. Can that work to our advantage? Does that take a little bit of pressure off?
You have to look to any advantage. I think certainly mentally going into a game. I think another key thing is the pitch looks in really good nick as well, which I think suits us. I think we've obviously had some issues at the Valley this season with the weather and everything else. Its pitch has been difficult, so. Yeah, that's another bonus for us. I think it's a game we know what we're going to come up against. Any of Warney's teams will be physically strong. They'll play forward, run forward. They'll test you physically. So we know where their strengths are. They've got a real good squad of players. It's hard to say with some of the changes he made the other night, some of his comments post game. Exactly what team he's going to go with. So we'll be well prepared.
You mentioned it already. It's going to be a 25,000 plus crowd probably, and potential up to 2,000 addicts travelling up to Pride Park as well. It's going to be a special atmosphere potentially, and a good pitch, and so it's a game everybody should be looking forward to.
Yeah, I know our supporters will be. As you said there, the last 3 results away from home have been really good considering what came before that. So everyone likes a good trip to an away game, knowing that the team are going to turn up and do the business. So our fans will be in good voice, no doubt about that. And it's important that we go there and really believe that we can get something from the game.
There we go. That's Dino speaking to Terry earlier on today. There's plenty to talk about in terms of the game, but I like this comment from Dan, actually, Tom. Speaking about how on Tuesday Derby conceded a counter-attack from Lincoln. And I was speaking to Callum from Ramstalk, and we're going to hear from him in a few moments' time about... He seemed a bit nervous when I kept talking about the pace we've got with the likes of Blackett, Taylor and Raksaki. I can't get my head around how we're going to set up for this game, because I've not seen Dean Holden take us to an away game like this yet. The only time we played like a half-decent team under Dean on the road was Portsmouth, but that's a Portsmouth team that were terrified in terms of their confidence, and obviously their manager got sacked after that game. So how do we set up in this game? Do we go to Derby and be one of those defensive-minded away teams that really sits back, or do we go and try and control possession a little bit more like we would have done under Bengon, away at Sheffield Wednesday, for example? How do you see us going into this one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like the latter. Obviously, Man United, we went there with kind of nothing to lose, but I felt like there even we were able to at times hurt them a little bit with our pace. And obviously, you look at the opposition there compared to the opposition on Saturday, and you'd say that was a lot better. So I think we've got it in us. I think Lincoln went down to 10 men as well, didn't they? And still drew. So when Innes gets sent off, that won't be a problem for us. So I don't feel like against the better teams we're one of those teams that can sit back. I know our home record certainly against the big or top 6 or 7 is very, very good. I don't know about away. Obviously, Portsmouth. I know we haven't played Ipswich away yet, and a couple of the others. So maybe they're to come. But for me, if we're going away to a big team, I don't think we should be scared of them. It's like Terry said there. It's the teams where we go in as favourites that we seem to struggle against. Whereas the teams in the top 6 or 7 places, we usually go toe to toe with them. And so for me, it's that. It's getting Jez and Corey on the ball. It's trying to hit them on the counter, as Daniel said in the comments there. I think don't be scared of them. Don't be scared of the atmosphere. That's the sort of thing we should relish. That's the sort of game we want to play ultimately week in, week out in the division above. So, yeah, I'd much rather go there, see us take it to them. And if we were to lose, at least we've given it a go. I think if we just try and sit back and obviously if you do nick it on the counter and you sit back and you win 1-0, it's obviously great. But I just don't think that's the way to play against this Derby side. I think we need to try and go at them and as you say, make them nervous.
I'm looking at our sort of team selection headaches that we've got, Lewis. And I guess probably one of the biggest ones is up top. You know, Chuck started against Forest Green, which is very rare. He was quiet. I mean, Dean said he felt like he occupied the defenders a little bit. Macaulay's been quiet when he's started. Obviously, if Miles isn't fit enough yet, which we assume probably won't be. What choice are you making if you're Dean Holden and you're looking at that front three? Because on either side of that front three, we've got two players who are in good form, you know, particularly Jez, but Corey's getting goals, scored against them at our place, of course, earlier on in the season. Who would you have lead the line in between those two?
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? I think because of him playing Tuesday, I probably would go for Bond because Chuck's playing those minutes on Tuesday. Just I feel, and I know it's the sort of tag that seems to be attached to him, is that he's more of an impact when he comes off the bench. And I think if you start Macaulay, he's kind of got a little bit of pace, needs to obviously work on his line because he tends to be off quite a bit. But if we are looking to play a bit more of a defensive game where we try and break on the counter with the pace of Corey and of Jez, then potentially Mac would probably be the better option for that. And then you bring on an EK with sort of, you know, half hour, 20 minutes to go, which, I mean, I'd love it if Church could play 90 minutes, but I do feel like his impact tends to come more from coming on. I thought he had more of an impact when he came on against Fleetwood Saturday. And then starting the game, as you say, he was quite quiet against Forest Green. Ideally, Miles is fit, but again, we're pinning our hopes on, you know, on a 19-year-old who's playing his first professional season. If we are without him, then I think if I had to make the call right now, I'd probably go with Macaulay Bonne.
Yeah, it's a tough one, is it? I mean, any other changes you're keen to see, Nath, for this game? Like we say, with our form on the road being good, I know Derby are a great side, but they have faltered ever so slightly. We're going to hear from Callum in a few seconds' time, but like we say, they're winless in 2. We're all right on the road. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could go up there and get something if we choose to take the game to them, or even if it is using that pace on the counter-attack.
Yeah, I think a lot of it hinges on Sess, to be honest. I think if Sess's knees flared up again, I can imagine Penny coming back in. I know we had a poor game against Fleetwood, but just to give us that little bit of balance. And also they've got Mendes Lang, but they've got a good team. You know, they've got Hourihane, McGoldrick and Knight, who I think are championship players. So I think the key is for us is just to try and get Jez and Corey 1v1 and pushing their fullbacks, really. So I can imagine us sitting a little bit, but not too much where we're going to be inviting a lot of pressure and a lot of crosses, because we looked a bit panicky on set pieces and from those sort of long balls on Tuesday. So I can't see too much changing, to be honest, mate, apart from the Cess one and potentially if Miles is fit. So it's going to be a tricky game. We know it's going to be, but as all the lads have said already, we always seem to step up against a bigger lot.
Right, well, let's hear how things are sort of gearing up from a Derby County point of view. Now, I caught up with Callum from Rams Talk during the week to find out a little bit more about Paul Warne's side. Joining us now on Charlton Live is Callum from the Rams Talk podcast. Callum, well, thanks for coming on. And, well, I looking at your league status, I imagine you're reasonably pleased with how the season's gone so far?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. As I say, start of the season, 5 players signed before the season started, and then 17 players signed on one day. Squads gel together within the playoffs. I'm happy with the way it's going. Obviously, a little bit of a teetering over the last couple of games, but I think we'll secure those playoff spots and hopefully try and get back up within one season.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned that gone a couple of games now without a win, but you're very much in the mix. I mean, is the expectation still from Derby fans that you can make a dart, maybe even possibly for top 2?
Yeah, that'll be the aim. If we can obviously maintain the pace of the top 2 who look like they're kind of a league of their own at the moment, they're kind of keeping the pace fairly high. If we can try and pick up the same amount of points and hopefully they drop them, and we are due to play them actually within the back end of the season. If we can pick up those wins there and then go from there, it's just a case of, I think at the moment the top 2 have got to come back to us as opposed to us catching them. So I think for now the job is to secure those playoff spots and then just see where it goes from there.
What have you made of Paul Warne since he came in? Obviously there was a disappointment, I guess, for Rosenior at the start of the season that he wasn't given the job, full time in the end. But Paul Warne, obviously a grand sort of appointee at this level.
Yeah, when his name was bandied around, in terms of League One specialists, I don't think there is one out there that's better than him. Three promotions within his first 4 or 5 seasons, something like that. So when he was banded around, it was one of those where if we can get him, I'll take him. It was a case of he's in the division above us at the time. So it was whether he actually saw the project of where Derby was at the time and goes from there. When I look at Rosenior and what he did, we are obviously all indebted to him for actually pulling the team together that he actually has in the squad we have. Yes, the style of play probably wasn't to the brand that the Derby fans really wanted, and Paul Warne's really got that energetic high press going. So it's a case of, I think people have really taken to him. People were a bit sceptical to start off with, but for now, I think the hype train is there, and Derby fans are well and truly behind Paul Warne, and just see where he takes us, whether that's this season or next.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well. Obviously, a lot of talk about Derby this season is about the size of the crowds that you get in is still, very impressive at this level. Obviously, we know that the takeover that went through at the start of the season, and there was all sorts of chaos going on before then. Has there been like a return of the feel good factor at Pride Park? Because obviously that's something at Charlton was still very much missing. So we're looking on a bit enviously there.
Yeah, I think with the 2 years, 2.5 years, nearly 3 years that we all went through as Derby fans, I think we can only have dreamed of having just some normality. And normality for us would be just to have a regular season where we're not searching our phones, looking at potential owners coming in and stuff like that. So to have a bit of stability with an owner now who well and truly is a fan of the club and is a local businessman, goes to home and away games with his wife, bless her, and also goes to even the women's games on Sundays. He's been seen there, so he really does have the club at heart, and has had to give up his own season ticket seat that he had for years and years and years with his family to now obviously as an owner and the directors. So for yourself at Charlton and stuff like that, like I said, we were there in terms of wanting stability. We've now got that. It's just a case of now trying to get back to a bit of normality, because at the moment we can't actually transfer players with transfer fees, buy players, stuff like that. We're still free transfers and loans. So that's probably the only stage that we're not quite at normality yet. We can't really do everything in the market that we want to. So we're kind of got the squad that we've got now, and they're doing the dividends, and we'll just see where they take us.
I mean, finally, then just looking ahead to Saturday, and I guess even with those 3 signings, you've obviously picked up some quality players. I was going to ask you which ones are the players that we should be looking out for, but I mean, looking at David McGoldrick, who's already got 3 hat-tricks this season, the League One Haaland, I guess he's probably right at the top of the list.
Yeah, David McGoldrick has been one of his own, mainly at home. Away is a little bit more difficult, but at home he's definitely proved to be that League One Haaland status, as you said. I think you're looking at the likes of Conor Hourihane, who in terms of League One is is one of the top players in terms of quality. You've then got Nathaniel Mendes-Lang, who's also the same. Again, coming from the Championship, but we've also got homegrown players that have proved to be Derby stalemates and regulars within the first team. Jason Knight is an Ireland international we've managed to keep hold of. Max Bird, who's actually quite out injured at the moment, so he won't be playing Saturday, but he's also one. But we've also managed to get Harvey White from Tottenham at the end of on loan at the end of the transfer window, who's kind of fits that mould. So there are 2 or 3 standout players, but it's really the team dynamic and that Paul Warne's really pulled together that will do the job. And it's just whether we can do the job and get a result on Saturday.
There we go. Thanks to Callum Bucock there for joining me just to look ahead to the game against Derby. Right, we're pretty much coming up to the end. I'm enjoying the prediction from Davin saying he'd like to see a 1-0 win up there, like we saw against Sunderland, which would be very nice. Luke says Callum seems like a lovely lad as well, which I wholeheartedly agree with. He was a very nice chap to speak to. So let's go around quickly then. Just very quick predictions from each of you. Lewis first.
I want to go 1-0 Charlton.
Lovely jubbly, Nathan.
0-0.
That's more
Yeah, no.
realistic.
I think like 1-1. I reckon. I think it's gonna be hard, but I reckon we'll sneak a little draw.
Yeah, Tom.
I was going to say 1-1, but I'll say 2-1 Charlton.
Lovely jubbly. Dan saying if any team wins it, I reckon it'll be one late on. Right, we've come to the end of this week's big match preview. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in via the podcast as per usual. Thanks to those of you who tuned in on catch up on our YouTube channel on our first live stream, and particularly for those of you who've joined us for our first ever live stream. I hope you've enjoyed it. I feel like it's gone okay, so I think we'll continue doing these. I'm really pleased with this new software, so I'm looking forward to being able to interact with you guys a bit more often. So we'll be back on Sunday. We'll confirm the time on our social medias, but I'm thinking about 10 o'clock in the morning to look back at the game against Derby. And of course, you'll be able to have your say on that show as well. So email studio@charltonlive.co.uk, tweet us at Charlton Live, or of course, you can come onto our live stream on YouTube and put your comments in the comments section. Right, thanks very much to Lewis, to Nathan, and to Tom for joining me on our first ever live stream on YouTube.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, boys. Much love.
I'm Louis Mendes. Thank you for listening and for watching, and we shall see you again on Sunday.